Alrighty, I think we're ready to start on the test security section. Again, my name is Julie Guthrie. I am the Director of Policy and Publications, and test security falls under my responsibility. So let's go through some of these slides. This is not new information. We did revise the test security section last year in the DCCR to have the following pieces of information. It's the same thing that you've seen in the DCCR in the past and the test security supplement. It's just been reorganized a little bit to hopefully be a little bit clearer. So there's an overview section, a testing irregularity section, penalties for violating security and confidentiality, and investigating and reporting testing irregularities, things to consider before, during, and after. That was a big part. That was part of the supplement. And then, of course, some of the security forms that we'll be talking about. And, of course, Jose corrected me. My name is Julie Cole now, not Julie Guthrie. Thank you, Jose. So some serious, whoops, went too fast. Serious violations. First of all of these are in the DCCR. This whole list I took straight from the DCCR, but they're also in Texas Administrative Code. So I'm just going to hit a few of them because I want you to stress in your training some of these serious violations that we see. Directly or indirectly assisting students with responses. Whether you're giving them a little hint or whether you're winking at them or telling them that they need to go redo number 3, whatever kind of assistance that you are giving a student during the test is considered a serious violation, should be reported, and there will be penalties. Tampering with student responses. So that's true whether you're doing the observable behaviors for TELPAS Alt or the ratings for TELPAS or erasing things on a STAR answer document. All of that is considered tampering with student responses and is not allowed. Falsifying holistic ratings or student responses. So again, if you are using somebody else's holistic writing and submitting it for a different student, or if you're just making them up, you'd be surprised what we see. That is a secure violation and is not allowed. Duplicating, recording, electronically capturing. You shouldn't be taking any kind of pictures of anything on the screen, and neither should your students. Even if it's the beginning of the test with the login information, we don't want you to take any kinds of pictures of things on the screen or in a test booklet. We don't want you to encourage anybody to do this. Encouraging or assisting an individual to violate any of these things is also considered a serious violation, as well as failing to report. So when you're investigating a serious violation, one of the things that we need you to do is notify us as soon as possible. We also need you to conduct a prompt investigation. We've had some trouble with some districts not submitting paperwork and not conducting a prompt investigation. So you need to gather all necessary evidence as it's still in your district, and also interview all individuals involved while they're still around and available, because as you know, our tests are towards the end of the year, and so we don't want you to wait till the end of the school year or the summer or even next fall, because people will have forgotten things, especially if you have to interview students. You need to submit to TEA the online incident report, and we'll go over that in just a minute, a summary of the incident, and typed, signed, and dated statements from each individual involved. So what does that really look like? Or what does that really mean? I can get my slide to go forward. There we go. Except, did it go forward too much? It did. Sorry about that. So when you, let me just make sure. No, it went forward a lot. Sorry about that. So when you submit the online incident report, again, you can get the incident report either in the security forms in the DCCR or on our security webpage on the Student Assessment Division. You need to submit the online incident report, and while you're doing that, it'll ask you to determine what type of incident report it is. We have lists of the 5 procedurals, which I'll go over in a minute: monitoring, accommodations, eligibility, improper accounting, and other. And we have a list of the 3 big serious violations. And if you hover over the word, which is what I did to get the screenshot of tampering, it gives you examples or explanation. Dang it, sorry about that. Tampering means altering student responses or falsifying holistic ratings or student responses. So if you're reporting an irregularity and you're not sure what category it falls in, whether it's a procedural or a tampering, you can hover over any of these words, which is why they have those underlined, and it'll pop up the information from the DCCR and that gives you some examples of these things. So you need to include an investigative summary and a plan of action. Important, you must submit the required information and documentation within 10 days. That's 10 business days or 10 working days. If you're not able to do that, please just contact us and let us know. Otherwise, we will start bugging you often. So we want to make sure we get the, that you guys conduct your investigation and submit everything as soon as possible so we can conduct our investigations and wrap up cases as soon as possible. Just general information about what the should be at part of the testing summary. Student outcomes is important, whether or not you invalidated the test. Educator outcomes, whether or not you put somebody on temporary suspension, permanent suspension, reassigned, whatever. And whether or not you as a district has determined that an incident occurred and who's at fault. So when you do statements from educators, this is the information that you need. And you need to get a signed and dated statement from every individual involved. Whether they were talking to somebody, overheard something, saw something, they should be providing a signed, dated statement. We also need you to talk with the person who is being accused of the serious violation, provide the information of what they're being accused of, and they should be able to write a written response to each of those allegations. They also need to sign and date a response. For the accused educator, we do need their contact information and their last 4 digits of their social security number. Okay, messed that one up. Give me a minute because I hit the end button. And that did not do it for me. Sorry, technology is not my friend. Let's end the show, and then I can. So I'll just continue talking a little bit as we do this. When you're interviewing students, that would have been the next slide. Let's see where we are. When you're interviewing students, you need to make sure that if you're recording the students, you do get permission from the parents. That is required in the Texas the Texas Education Code. Oh, I'm getting closer. Lots of slides. If anybody knows what slide number security starts in, let me know. Oh, we're actually very close. Sorry about this. 196, thank you. We're gonna do it this way. So we recommend that you not, when you're interviewing students, it's important to ask them all the same questions and not leading questions, just general questions. And you shouldn't paraphrase what the student said because that is not really submissible or usable evidence in a trial or in an investigation. What we do want you to do is interview the students and either have someone transcribe what they say and then the kids can look it over and sign it, or interview them and record it. But we do want to hear specifically what the students have to say, not what you interpreted that the student said. Oh, goodness, let's try again. Someone said 196. Apologies for the delay. No, from current slide. There we go. So this was our educators. And then I was just talking about interviewing students. So again, we want them to be either handwritten and then signed by the student or recorded and transcribed. Here is the Texas Education Code that talks about the written consent if you're going to record those students. All right, penalties for violations. First of all, there is a new 1-year suspension. Minimum 1-year suspension if that violation gets referred to the State Board of Educator Certification, and they will determine whether or not it's a restriction, a reprimand, a suspension, or revocation. It is a Class C misdemeanor. We as the agency could invalidate students' test results if we decide that they've been given an unfair advantage. Even if you as a district did not invalidate them, we still can go back and invalidate them. If it's a district-wide or campus-wide issue, we might lower accreditation status or accountability ratings. And for charters, we could provide a charter sanction or revocation. So in the past couple of years that I've been working on security, here are some cases that have been referred to the State Board of Education and what resulted. Now this, of course, is going to depend on the number of students involved in the serious violation, as well as the number of questions. So one person got a 1-year suspension for providing direct and indirect assistance, but a different person got a 2-year suspension because they identified incorrect answers, they directed students to go back and rework items, they provided clues, and it was more students and more questions. And then this one, the educator certification was actually revoked during an oral administration. The teacher helped students solve problems and use voice inflection, A, B, C, D, as well as facial expressions during that oral administration to indicate which ones were right and which ones were wrong. So please make sure you're telling your people that it is a serious violation and they could get their license suspended or revoked if they assist students or do a serious violation in any way. All right, let's do our check for understanding. Danny, can you pull that up for us, please? Okay, what is the deadline to submit an online incident report form and all required documentation to TEA? And remember, while you're working on answering this, if you aren't able to meet that deadline, just call us and let us know that you're going to need a little bit more time. That's not a problem, but we want you to aim for meeting that deadline. Is it 1 year? Is it 1 month? Is it 10 weeks? Or is it 10 days? Only half of you guys have voted, so there it goes. It's increasing a little bit more. We'll give you another second or two. All right, the answer, 100%, yay. The answer is 10 days, good job. It probably helped that I had folded that. It's also in the manual. Yes, you have to submit the online incident report and all documentation to TEA within 10 days. I know that sometimes that's a bit difficult. And again, so if you need additional time, just let us know. But the requirement is 10 days. Okay. You know what it is there's a delay in moving on to the next slide. Okay, so some procedural testing irregularities. The good thing is that procedural ones are less severe, more common, and they're typically just the result of a minor deviation. They break into 4 major categories and then an other, a catch-all: monitoring, accommodations, eligibility, and accounting. And I'll go through some of those as well. They do require that you submit the incident report and a plan of action, but that's all the documentation we need for the procedural irregularities in most cases. The important thing to remember on this particular thing, or for any procedurals, is it's helpful if you call us while students are still testing or while testing materials are still in the district, minor deviation from testing procedures and have minimal impact on students. Remember, the tests are all about what students know. And so we want to make sure that we give them the most opportune experience to show what they know. And so if you have a minor deviation from testing procedures, call us and we should be able to help you figure out how to remedy that. So when we talk about these minor procedural testing irregularities, even though my slide is not moving forward,
Julie, you might have directional buttons in the bottom left corner if you hover over them.
Probably she lost connection. So let's just give her a second to jump back in.
I'm back. Jose, are you running it now?
Yeah.
Thank you. That probably will be better. Go on to the next slide if you don't mind.
Will not. Just give me one.
Except I probably have to stop sharing, don't I?
I believe everyone is seeing mine now.
Good.
Julie, you were on slide.
One more.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so monitoring errors. Basically, monitoring errors are any errors in the administration of the test, likely by the test administrator. So things such as reinforcing strategies, you didn't use the manual, you didn't read the say directions, you didn't do the seating chart, you didn't give the kids enough time, you gave them too much time, like over the 4 hours, or sometimes even into the next day when you weren't supposed to. We actually got quite a few TELPAS irregularities this past spring that they didn't know that students weren't allowed to continue the reading test into another day. They're not. All right, next slide, please. Next category is accommodation errors. Jose. Well, I'm just going to keep talking. Accommodation errors, because I probably wasted a lot of y'all's time. Accommodation errors are pretty much anything having to do with accommodations. So whether a student was provided an unallowable accommodation or a non-approved accommodation, or you messed up in providing the accommodation, or you failed to get the approval, any version of that is an accommodation irregularity and needs to be reported. The next slide talks about the eligibility errors. And so again, we have added more examples this year to help you. And don't forget, you can hover over the slides if you need to help give you some of these examples, because these examples, this is just a small subset of what's in the manual and what's in the incident report form. So eligibility errors include giving the wrong test to the wrong kid. So when we say giving the wrong test to the wrong kid, that could be giving a Spanish test to a kid who should have had English test to a kid who should have had Spanish. We had this year some TELPAS ones where they gave them the special paper administration of TELPAS reading instead of the online one, or vice versa. If you give them the general assessment instead of the alternate, or the alternate assessment instead of the general one, all of those count as eligibility errors. Also, giving the wrong test on the wrong day is an eligibility error. And as I mentioned way at the beginning earlier this morning, if you give the test to a student who only has had half of the curriculum, an EOC test, that's an eligibility error, because that student shouldn't have given the test if he wasn't given the instruction. All right, next slide is about— Julie,
if you don't mind, I want to stop here for a second, because a common question that I get tends to be around testing recent immigrants. Usually when students arrive right before or during the week of testing, obviously the district didn't have enough time to gather all the information to either identify them correctly or to decide what are the most appropriate accommodations. That is a little different because a district is acting with the information they have and making the best judgment. So obviously we wouldn't consider that an irregularity. So in those cases, please don't feel bad for erring on the side of the child because we don't have complete or perfect information. If you are confused, give us a call. We're here to help you make the best decision for the students. Thank you, Julie.
Of course, you're right. That is a common question. All right, improper accounting for secure materials. The biggest one we received this past spring, again, even though we didn't have a lot of the testing, we still had some testing like TELPAS. And one of the biggest examples was I gave the wrong kid the wrong ticket. I gave Johnny Susie's ticket. So if you're giving the wrong student the wrong test materials, whether it's a test booklet, answer document, test ticket that belongs to another student, that's a problem, and that's a irregularity that needs to be reported. And again, if you call us, we can help you resolve it so that the students can continue testing under the right registration information. It's also a FERPA violation if you're sharing test results, test performance, completed answer documents, if you're not keeping those secure, holistic writing samples, TELPAS rating scores. If you're not having any of those, maintaining the security of any of those, it is an improper accounting procedural error. Okay. So the oaths of test security and confidentiality. Last year, we revised the oaths and we separated them into 3 oaths, and some of the oaths have 2 different parts to it. So the superintendent and district coordinator oaths are online forms with check boxes that should be submitted online. You can print them for a copy if you'd like to, or save them electronically, but you do submit them online by hitting the submit button at the bottom. If you have questions about whether that went through or not, you need to contact the ETS support system because that's who it goes to. And so they're the best ones to check to see if it got in there. Go ahead. Jose? Yeah. Jose, can you forward it to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, the superintendent, and again, I said that some of the oaths have 2 parts. The superintendent and chief administrative officer has 2 parts, and the district testing coordinator has 2 parts. Part 1 of each of those is supposed to be submitted prior to the administration of any state assessment, and for the district testing coordinator, again, after you've received this training and before you handle there at the beginning of the year to sign part 1.
Julia, you may want to cut your video because we are is breaking. So let's just focus on the audio. There we go.
Sorry about that. Part 2 is for once all the testing has been completed for the school year for the superintendent. So we should have all of those superintendent oaths from last year. And part 2 for the district testing coordinator is once all the secure materials, once testing has been completed and all the secure materials are returned from the state testing contractor. Now, again, the person that is there at the end of the year is the one that should sign this. We know that there are some districts who still have some secure materials out there because they have not been able to get back onto the campus to submit them. If you would please contact the appropriate vendor or TEA to give us an estimate of when you can return those secure materials, that would be much appreciated. But at some point you will need to also finish out the last school year and sign part 2 of that oath. If the superintendent is not there or the district testing coordinator is not still there and maybe that role is vacant, someone in the district who has a supervisory role, such as an assistant superintendent, might be able to fill out the oath instead. Next slide, please. Jose, will you go on to the next slide?
I believe it's the connection. Give it a sec. next slide is the general oath of test
So
security.
the next slide talks about, okay, thank you. The next slide talks about the general oath of test security. Yes. The general oath of test security is for any other school personnel who participate in the testing or handle secure test materials. So if you have a technology person who's not actually handling secure test materials or monitoring tests, they don't have to sign the oath. If they're just setting stuff up, that's fine. The general oath is a fillable PDF that can either be printed or saved electronically. They do not need to be submitted to the agency or to our contractors. Go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. All right, here's our last check for understanding for security. Which materials are considered secure? A, online test tickets and TELPAS holistically rated materials. B, test booklets and STAR alternate 2 image cards. C, online assessments and TELPAS alternate ratings. D, completed answer documents and TELPAS calibration activities. E, all of the above. So feel free to think about those for a minute and select the answer you think is the best answer for those, for that question. Give another second or two for a few more people to vote. We're only at 60%. There we go, at 60%. I think I must have made my questions too easy. The correct answer, which is the one that got 100%, good job. So make sure you use that and train your people on that. All of the things listed in A, B, C, and D are considered secure materials and must be kept locked when not in use, behind a closed locked door, etc. All right, so good job for you guys for getting that answer correct. Questions on security?
Actually, it's time to pause the recording.